Hello and welcome back to our business law class. My name is Edward. I'll be your host. Yesterday we dealt with what the Constitution is all about as a source of law. Today we are going to deal with legislation. So our second source of law is legislation, which can also be called acts of parliament, and it can also be called statute law. Legislation refers to law made by parliament, so it's law made by parliament. So whenever you hear something like a bill which is being passed by parliament, that's what is called legislation. Okay, and so the power in the country or in Kenya, the power to legislate is given to the Kenyan parliament. The Kenyan parliament. So you're going to see what makes up the Kenyan parliament. Of course, it's made up of the National Assembly. This is where the MPs sit. National Assembly, the MPs, and of course the Senate. This is made up of the senators. Okay, all of them can come up with laws through what we call legislation. Statute law or legislation is categorized into direct legislation and indirect legislation. Okay, so these are the two categories of legislation. Indirect direct legislation, this is where parliament is the body, is the law-making body, and of course in the indirect legislation, this is where a person or a body other than parliament makes laws. We're going to see an interesting concept in legislation, which is bills. We're going to see what bills are. And so a bill is just a draft. Okay, it's a draft of a proposed act of parliament. It's a draft of a proposed act of parliament. Okay, and the classification of bills starts with government bills. So this is a bill that has been sponsored by the government. Okay. And after sponsorship, it is now introduced to the National Assembly for debate. The next one is a private members bill. And a private members bill is introduced by a member who is not a minister. Member who is not a minister. Okay, the equal sign cancelled just means it's not, who is not a minister, to deal with any matter which the government hasn't taken up or addressed. Okay, that's what a private members bill. The next one is a private bill. Note the difference between the private bill and a private members bill. And so a private bill is which is meant to deal with matters affecting a particular section of the society. So it's a bill that is meant to deal with a particular section of the community or a particular area. Take an example of a given area like Thika or Nairobi. If it was a private bill that deals with matters affecting a given municipality, then it would be a private bill. The next one is a public bill. Public bill. This is a bill meant to deal with matters of public policy. Public policy. It's meant to deal with matters of public policy, and their provisions affect the general public. So that's what a public bill is, and that closes the categorization of bills. We're going to see what the legislative process is like. Okay, so the legislative process is the process through which a bill goes through before it becomes law. And so the first step is drafting the bill. Of course, we have drafting the bill taking place. Okay, so the bill is drafted by a given body. Before it gets number 2, it's published or publication of the bill. Okay, so the second step after drafting the bill, it's the publication of the bill. The third step is, of course, the first reading at the parliament, just reading or mentioning. Where nothing else happens, it's just reading. Then the second one, the second reading, which is number 4. Second reading. The next step is the committee stage. Committee stage. A stage is set up, and after it is set up, that's when